The storm rolled over the desert like a wounded beast, growling across the sky in low, pulsing waves. Cold rain hammered the red earth, turning dust into slick clay that clung to boots and hooves alike. Lightning cracked open the night, and in that single flash of white, he saw her, standing at the edge of his porch as if the storm itself had carried her there. A lone Apache woman, barefoot, shivering, her dark hair plastered to her face, her torn dress whipping violently in the wind. She looked thin, too thin, and her feet were raw and bleeding from miles of stone and thorn. Eamon Hart tightened his grip on the lantern. He was not expecting company. Not tonight. Not ever, really. Solitude was something he had learned to live with after the war, after all the things he had done and all the things he wished he hadn't. The woman raised her chin, though her entire body trembled. Her voice came out rough, as if scraped along stone. "No one wants to give me work. I need shelter." The words didn't beg, they surrendered, as if she had already heard too many doors slam in her face, as if she was used to rejection being the only language spoken to her. Eamon said nothing at first. The rain plastered the brim of his hat, dripping down his coat, but he didn't move. He studied her bruises, her exhaustion, the way her eyes flicked past him toward the darkness, as though expecting figures to emerge from it. He realized she wasn't just running from the storm. She was running from someone. Her knees buckled slightly. Eamon stepped forward without thinking and caught her elbow. She tensed at the touch, her entire body going rigid like a trapped animal. He let go instantly. "You can come inside," he said quietly. For a moment, she just stared at him, rain dripping from her lashes. She didn't trust it, didn't trust him, didn't trust anything. But the cold was killing her faster than fear could. She stepped into the cabin. Eamon shut the door behind her, bolting it with a quiet clack that seemed to echo too loudly in the cramped space. The cabin was small, just a single room warmed by a fire that had burned low during the storm. Rough-hewn log walls, a stone hearth, a chair, a cot, a worn map of the frontier tacked on the wall. She looked at everything quickly, assessing exits, threats, distance. She was not someone used to safety. Eamon moved slowly to avoid startling her. He grabbed a blanket off the cot and held it out. She stared at the fabric before he gently set it on the table, allowing her the choice. Only then did she step forward and wrap it around her shoulders. She lowered herself onto the chair near the fire, inch by inch, as if the warmth itself might burn her. "What's your name?" Eamon asked. She didn't answer. She stared at the fire, jaw tight. He softened his tone. "I ain't gonna hurt you. Just want to know who I'm talking to." After a long silence, she whispered, "Nadezhda." The name was unexpected, soft, almost foreign on the tongue. He nodded. "How long since you slept?" She shrugged weakly. 2 nights, maybe more. And eaten. Her silence answered for her. Eamon opened a tin, placing cornbread and jerky on the table beside her. She didn't reach for it right away. She waited, watching him, weighing the risks. Then she ate, small, careful bites, like someone who had learned the hard way not to show hunger in front of men. "You running from someone?" Eamon asked. She hesitated, then slowly pulled back her sleeve. A handprint, a deep, vicious bruise. A man's fingers printed in purple-black on her skin. Eamon clenched his jaw. "Who did that?" "White traders," she whispered. "They came to my village. Took many. I escaped. Others did not." Her voice stayed steady, but her hands trembled. Eamon sat across from her, elbows on his knees. He had seen plenty of raids, plenty of killings, plenty of misery out here. But something about her, her strength despite her state, her pride despite the pain, made this hit deeper. The fire crackled. Thunder rolled faintly outside. Nadezhda's eyes slowly began to close from exhaustion. Eamon stood and added wood to the fire, letting the warmth bloom through the room. "You can sleep by the fire," he murmured. "Storm won't break till morning." She opened her eyes halfway, studying him again, really studying him, as if trying to decide if he was a danger she had misjudged. Her voice was soft but firm. "If I stay, I work. You don't have to do anything tonight. Just rest." Her throat tightened, not in emotion, but in disbelief, as if she'd never been told to rest, never been allowed to. "You're safe," Eamon said gently. She looked away quickly, her breath shaking once. Nadezhda finally laid down beside the fire, curling the blanket around herself. Eamon stepped back, giving her space, watching her breathing slow into sleep. Her face softened slightly, still stern, still wary, but at peace for the first time since she'd arrived. He stood for a long while, staring into the fire, listening to the storm outside and the quiet inside. But as he turned to check the windows, something prickled at the back of his neck. A sense, a warning. Nadezhda hadn't arrived at his door by accident. Someone had chased her this far. Someone who would come again. And when they did, they would bring hell with them. Morning arrived slowly, crawling over the desert like a wounded sun. The storm clouds had broken apart into long gray streaks that hung low against the mountains. The land smelled of wet earth and broken sage, a brief sweetness in a world usually dry and unforgiving. Eamon stepped onto the porch, coffee steaming in his hand. His eyes scanned the horizon automatically, the habit of a soldier who had survived too many ambushes. Nothing moved except the distant sway of mesquite trees in the breeze. But something felt wrong. Tracks. Fresh tracks. He knelt, brushing wet grit aside with 2 fingers. Hoofprints. 3 horses. Riding hard. Riding in the storm. Riding toward his cabin. He rose slowly, jaw tightening. Whoever they were, they had come close, too close, and then circled away again. Scouts. Searching. Looking for her. He glanced through the open doorway toward Nadezhda. She was awake now, sitting cross-legged on the floor near the fire, quietly repairing the torn hem of her dress using thread she'd fashioned from the blanket's edge. Her movements were swift, precise, practiced, like someone who had mended clothing before every winter in a place where failure meant freezing. "You slept?" Eamon asked. She nodded once. "You're fire kind." He tried not to stare, but there was something different about her in daylight. Her face was strong and angular, eyes deep brown and steady, more restless intelligence than fear. The bruises showed darker now, blooming across her arms and collarbone like cruel fingerprints left by men who thought her less than human. Eamon stepped inside, shutting the door with a quiet thud. Someone was here last night. Tracks in the mud. Nadezhda didn't flinch, but her needle stopped mid-stitch. 3 horses? He froze. "You knew." She nodded. "They followed me for many miles. Traders. Hunters of people. They take women. Sell them." Her voice hardened at the edges. "They call us property." Eamon felt something hot twist in his chest. Not just anger, but recognition. He'd seen slavers during the war. Seen what they did. Heard what they laughed about. The memory returned with a violence he wished it wouldn't. "They'll come again," she murmured. "Yeah," he agreed. "They will." Nadezhda tied off the stitch and stood. The blanket still hung around her shoulders like a cloak, but her posture shifted, straighter, resolute. "I will leave soon. They want me, not you." "You won't make it far with them hunting you," Eamon replied. "I made it far before," she countered softly. He shook his head. "Not alone. Not now." A flicker of frustration crossed her eyes, but beneath it lived something deeper. Fear disguised as defiance. Eamon moved to the cupboard and took out a canteen, jerky, a coil of rope, and a small leather pouch of dried beans. He set them on the table. "You're not leaving until they're dealt with," he said firmly. Nadezhda stepped back slightly, almost startled by the words. "Why help me? Many men close their doors when they see my face." "Maybe they're cowards," he said. "Or fools." Her gaze softened just a little. "Or maybe you were different." He wasn't sure how to answer that, so he didn't. Instead, he checked the rifle leaning against the wall, testing the weight, ensuring the chamber was clean. Nadezhda watched him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Respect, caution, and something like gratitude buried so deep she was afraid to show it. "You know how to use a bow?" "A knife?" he asked. "I know how to survive," she replied. That was enough. The day stretched on as they prepared the cabin for trouble. Eamon boarded the windows with extra planks. Nadezhda gathered stones and stacked them near the door. She could throw with startling precision. They worked in silence, but it wasn't cold silence. It was the kind formed by two people who understood each other without needing many words. As they worked, Nadezhda glanced at his fields, the broken fence, the horse grazing lazily beyond the trees. "You live here alone," she observed. "Yeah." "Why?" He hesitated. He hadn't spoken about this in a long time. "Lost my wife. Years back. After the war. This place was quiet. I needed quiet." She looked at him, then truly looked, and he felt something shift, like a door inside him had been opened a crack after being shut for years. "I lost family too," she whispered. "All of them." The simplicity of the words only made them heavier. Before he could respond, a crow passed overhead, its shrill cry slicing through the stillness. Nadezhda stiffened. "They are near," she said quietly. Eamon slung the rifle over his shoulder. "Inside. Now." They closed the door and deadbolted it. The cabin felt suddenly smaller, the walls closer. Nadezhda moved to the side of the window, pressing her back against the logs, her breathing slow and controlled. Eamon peeked through a crack. 3 riders. Just as she said. Dirty coats. Wide hats. Faces sharp and mean. One carried a whip at his belt. Another had a lasso coiled around his saddle horn. Their eyes scanned the land like wolves hunting wounded prey. The leader, a tall man with a scar splitting one cheek, leaned forward in his saddle. He studied the cabin for a long moment. Too long. A cold prickle ran through Eamon's spine. The man finally motioned to the others, and they rode past, but not away. They circled slowly, deliberately, leaving a trail of churned mud behind them. Testing. Hunting. Waiting. Eamon stepped back from the window. "They know you're here." Nadezhda closed her eyes briefly. "They won't leave." "No," he agreed, checking his rifle again. "They won't." A long silence stretched between them. Not fear, anticipation. "We'll deal with them," Eamon said, his voice low and steady. "But we do it smart." Nadezhda opened her eyes. Something fierce glowed in them now, something that matched the firelight flickering behind her. "I trust you," she said softly. He wasn't sure why, but hearing those words hit him harder than the threat outside. The riders disappeared behind the tree line. The wind grew still. The world held its breath. Night was coming again, and with it, hell. The fire cracked softly under the shelter of the overhanging rocks, casting wavering bands of gold across the canyon walls. Miriam sat with her knees pulled close, her shawl wrapped tightly around her shoulders. The rain had eased into a settling drizzle, the kind that turned the air cold and heavy. She stared into the flames as if the answers to her life were hidden in those shifting embers. Cole sat a few feet away, leaning against the slick stone. He wiped down his rifle with slow, practiced strokes, the kind that suggested routine rather than true focus. His gaze kept drifting to her, not out of suspicion, no, that part of him was fading, but out of a strange curiosity he couldn't yet name. Miriam felt it. She didn't look at him. Her voice emerged low, hoarse from cold and exhaustion. "You did not have to help me." Cole lifted his eyes. Didn't feel right, sending someone out into a storm like that. She let a humorless breath escape. "Storm is better than men. Storm is honest." Cole paused in mid-motion. Her words lingered, heavier than the wet air. "You talk like someone who's been run through hell." Miriam gave a faint, bitter smile. "Hell? No. Hell is fire. Men have colder ways." The fire popped sharply, echoing against the canyon's stone walls. Cole waited, knowing she was choosing her words carefully. Miriam held her palms out toward the warmth. She didn't look afraid anymore. Not of him, not of the night. Just tired. "When the war came," she said softly, "my people were scattered. Soldiers took the warriors. Some were sent far. Women taken as servants, slaves. Some traded, some beaten. I was taken by settlers who said they needed help. Said I should be grateful." Cole swallowed. "You escaped." "Yes," she whispered, "but not before they taught me how little my life was worth to them." She didn't cry. She didn't raise her voice. She spoke like someone who had repeated the story to herself many times, just to stay sane. Cole set the rifle down beside him. The air between them changed, not warmer, but clearer, like the smoke had finally lifted. "I'm sorry," he said simply. Miriam didn't respond for a long moment. Then she glanced at him, studying the sincerity in his face. Why are you different from them? Cole chuckled dryly. Hate to disappoint you, but I ain't different in ways that matter. I've fought Indians. I've lost friends in raids. I've blamed entire tribes for things a handful of men did. I'm no saint, yet you helped me. He shrugged, embarrassed by her steady gaze. Maybe I'm tired of taking the easy path. Maybe I'm tired of hating people I never bothered to understand. Miriam's eyes softened. Just a little. Maybe, she murmured. You are learning. A gust of wind swept through the canyon, scattering sparks. Cole leaned forward and added another piece of dry cedar to keep the fire alive. Miriam watched his hands move with simple, instinctive kindness, something she hadn't seen in a long time. They ate jerky and a piece of stale bread. Miriam accepted it without pride or hesitation. Hunger defeated pride fast enough. As they finished their meager meal, Cole stiffened suddenly. Quiet. Miriam froze. Far off, carried on the damp night air, came the faint but unmistakable sound of hooves. Cole rose quickly, stamping the fire out until only the faintest glow remained. He grabbed his rifle and motioned with 2 fingers. Miriam followed silently, slipping behind a jutting piece of stone. They crouched low, listening. The hoofbeats grew louder, 3 horses, maybe 4. Cole leaned close enough that his breath brushed Miriam's cheek. Those men back there, they'll have tracked you. You left a trail through the mud. Miriam closed her eyes, dread tightening her chest. If they find us, they won't, Cole whispered. Not tonight. The horses slowed in the distance. Muffled voices echoed, distorted by canyon turns. Cole listened, strained, trying to catch any familiar tone. Miriam touched his sleeve. You should not have helped me, she whispered. Now they hunt you too. Well, Cole whispered back. Guess that means we're running together now. He gave her a quick half-smile. She almost returned it. The voices faded again, the riders moving down a different branch of the canyon. Cole didn't relax until the sound had vanished completely. Slowly, he motioned Miriam back to the fire pit. No more fire, he decided. We're moving. We need distance before dawn. Where will we go? She asked. My cabin's hidden, Cole said. Hard place to find unless you're looking for it. We rest there, figure out our next steps. Miriam hesitated. Trust was hard, painfully hard, but she nodded. They packed what little they had and slipped through the narrow canyon pass, moving with careful steps, avoiding loose stones. Cole walked ahead, but every few minutes he looked back, checking that she was still behind him. Every time, she met his eyes. Hours passed. The rain finally stopped. The moon broke through the clouds, pale and thin, illuminating the vast sagebrush flats stretching before them. The world felt open, exposed. Miriam walked beside him now instead of behind. She didn't speak, but their silence no longer felt tense. As they neared the foothills leading toward Cole's homestead, a strange rustling broke from the brush. Cole grabbed Miriam's arm, pulling her behind him. He raised his rifle, eyes scanning the movement. A tall, broad-shouldered figure stepped into the moonlight. Miriam inhaled sharply. Then her breath escaped all at once, full of shock and disbelief. Tanek, she whispered. The man, painted in desert red and black, wearing a wolf hide over his shoulders, stood still as stone. His eyes shifted from Miriam to Cole and back again. A warrior. Apache. And not just any warrior, one of her own. Cole kept his rifle steady. He didn't point it directly at Tanek, but he wasn't lowering it either. Tanek raised a single hand. Not threatening, not surrendering, just acknowledging. Miriam stepped forward before Cole could stop her. I thought you were dead, she breathed. Tanek's deep voice rumbled softly. Alive. Searching. You were taken. I followed. Cole blinked. He's been tracking you. Miriam nodded. He is my brother. Tanek's gaze sharpened on Cole. You help her. Yeah, Cole said quietly. I did. Tanek stepped closer, towering over him. Cole tightened his grip on the rifle, but then Tanek placed his hand on his own chest and bowed his head. A debt, Tanek said. Paid in loyalty. Cole didn't know what to say. Miriam watched the 2 men, hope flickering in her eyes for the first time since she'd arrived at his door. The night had changed. The stakes had changed. And now, with Tanek here, they were no longer running alone. The shadows of danger still followed, but they had an ally. One hell of a strong ally. The storm behind them was nothing compared to what waited ahead. Dawn crept slowly over the horizon, staining the sky with streaks of orange and ember red. Cole's cabin sat nestled against a thick stand of pines, half hidden by wild brush and the jagged rise of the foothills. Smoke curled gently from the remnants of last night's fire, and for a brief, fragile moment, the world seemed quiet enough to believe peace was possible. Inside the cabin, Miriam sat near the small wooden table, fingers wrapped around a tin cup of warm water. Tanek stood near the doorway like a carved statue, silent, unmoving, but alert to every shift of wind. Cole loaded cartridges into his rifle, the metallic clicks barely audible over the rustle of trees. "We can't stay long," Tanek rumbled without looking back. Cole nodded. "They'll find the cabin eventually. Men like that don't give up." Miriam's eyes lowered. "They want me back so they can punish me for escaping." Cole placed the final cartridge into the chamber and snapped the rifle shut. "Not gonna happen." Tanek finally turned, his gaze piercing. "You help my sister. I help you. But we must choose where we stand. Run or fight." Cole leaned one elbow on the table. "I've run enough in my life. And you?" He looked at Miriam. She hesitated. Fear still lived inside her. It breathed in her pauses, in every uncertain glance. But something stronger had begun to bloom too, fed by survival, by kindness she hadn't expected, by the presence of her brother. She lifted her chin. "I am done running." Tanek nodded once, proud. Cole clicked his tongue in approval. "Then we make our stand." By noon, the rumble of approaching riders echoed through the valley. Miriam heard it before Cole did, her instincts sharpened by years of danger. She rushed outside, heart pounding. Tanek crouched low beside the brush, watching dust rise over the ridge. "5 men," he said calmly. "Maybe 6. Cole joined them with his rifle slung across his shoulder. Heavily armed, Tanek nodded. "Rifles. Revolvers. One is a shotgun." "Damn," Cole muttered. They came ready. Miriam's breath trembled, but she did not retreat. She placed a hand on Tanek's arm. "Brother, if they take me, they will kill you both." Tanek's jaw tightened. "They will take no one." Cole scanned the terrain, rock outcrops, narrow animal trails, thick pine trunks. "We use the land. Hide, move, shoot, and keep moving. No standing in the open." Tanek agreed with a short grunt. Miriam turned to both men. "I can help. I know these men. I know how they move." Cole stepped forward with a firm shake of his head. "You're staying low. Behind cover. This ain't." "I survived them once," Miriam said, voice steady with a new resolve. "I will not hide while you fight for me." Cole stared at her, taken aback. Miriam held his gaze without flinching. He exhaled slowly. "All right, stay beside cover, do exactly as we say, and keep your eyes sharp." The rumble of hooves grew louder, closer, no longer distant thunder, but the growl of a storm almost upon them. They took their positions. Tanek climbed into the rocky rise above the cabin, giving him an eagle's vantage point. Cole slipped behind a fallen pine, rifle ready. Miriam crouched beside a thick tree trunk, hidden but with clear sight of the trail. The riders appeared. 6 men, filthy with dust and rage, rode hard through the trees. Their leader, a broad-shouldered man with a scar running down his cheek, scanned the cabin with narrowed eyes. "That's the place," he growled. Miriam felt her pulse race. Her nails dug into the bark behind her. She recognized him, the scar man. The one who had dragged her by the hair the night she escaped. Her breath hitched. Her vision dimmed for a moment. Then she saw Cole, steady, calm, focused, and Tanek above, silent as a hawk. She felt the fear break. The scarred man dismounted. "Spread out. She's here somewhere." He moved toward the cabin door. Cole whispered, "Wait for it." A rider approached the fallen pine. Cole held his breath. "Wait." The rider bent down, squinting into the shadows. Cole struck first. A sharp crack split the air as he fired. The rider fell off his horse, hitting the ground hard. Tanak fired next, his arrow slicing through the air, hitting a second rider cleanly in the shoulder. The man screamed and toppled backwards. Chaos erupted. Gunshots exploded from all sides. Horses reared. Men shouted orders, returning fire wildly, hitting trees and rocks. Miriam pressed tighter against the tree, heart pounding as bullets cracked past her ears. She clutched the small revolver Cole had given her. She had never fired at a man, but the scarred leader charged toward the cabin, shotgun in hand. "Miriam!" Cole yelled. "Stay down." The scarred man spotted movement, her movement. He turned toward her, raising the shotgun. She froze. His finger tightened on the trigger, and Cole broke from cover, firing a single, desperate shot. The bullet struck the scarred man in the arm, spinning him sideways. He roared in pain, dropping the shotgun. Tanak followed with another arrow, grazing the man's leg. The leader stumbled but didn't fall. He grabbed his revolver, eyes burning with hatred. And then Miriam stood, not behind cover, not hiding. She stepped forward with the revolver raised in both trembling hands. The scar man snarled, lifting his gun toward Cole. "You're dead, cowboy," Miriam shouted, voice breaking with rage. "No, you look at me." He turned. She fired. The shot echoed through the valley. The scarred leader staggered, guns slipping from his fingers. He stared at her in disbelief, as if shocked she would ever dare to fight back. He collapsed to the ground. The remaining riders fled, dragging their wounded with them, wanting nothing more to do with an Apache woman who fought like a storm. Silence returned slowly, like the land itself needed time to breathe again. Cole approached Miriam cautiously. Her arms trembled. The revolver slipped from her hands, falling softly onto the pine needles. I didn't want to kill again," she whispered. But he would not stop. Cole rested a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You did what you had to. You survived. That's strength, Miriam. Real strength." Tanak descended from the rocks, placing his hand over hers. "You are free now, truly free." Miriam swallowed hard, tears gathering at the corners of her eyes. Not grief, not fear, relief. Cole looked between the siblings. "You got choices now," he said softly. "Both of you. You can head south with Tanak's people, or stay a while till the world settles." Miriam met his eyes. "What will you do?" Cole shrugged lightly. "Keep ranching. Keep breathing. Maybe stop judging folks by what others say about them." She smiled, a real smile this time. "You have learned." He grinned back. "Still learning?" Tanak looked at his sister. "We go when you choose." Miriam glanced toward the open land, the long road ahead, the life she could reclaim. Then she looked back at Cole, at the man who had seen her as human when others refused. "I will go with my brother," she said softly, "but I will not forget what you did. If ever you need us, we will return." Cole tipped his hat. "Reckon that's the best deal I ever made." They shared one last, quiet moment. Mutual respect forged in fire and danger. Then Miriam and Tanak walked into the pines, their silhouettes merging with the rising sun, heading toward a future she could finally choose for herself. Cole watched until they vanished from sight. "Safe travels," he murmured. "Both of you." He turned back toward his cabin, alone again, but changed forever.